So we kick off day 2 and it's draft time again. And this time we followed Guillaume Matignon. And Matignon's a former world champion, very good at the game, but the last few years hasn't played a lot, is not a regular at Grand Prix, and does not put a ton of time into the game. So there was a bit of controversy in the draft because, put simply, he had decided on an all-in plan. He decided that he was going to be the merfolk drafter at the table and nothing was going to prevent him from doing that, or he just wasn't going to do very well, in which case he was going to shrug and go, never mind, eh? He got blue-green merfolk in our feature pod on the second day and went 3-0 with it. Great stuff. As a result, he was 10-1 and co-leading with Mike Sigrist of Team Channel Fireball and Yan Wing Chun. Remember him? Second semi-finalist from Pro Tour Hour of Devastation before that episode with Hazaret. So 3 co-leaders. And you might think that would be congratulations, Guillaume Matignon, hats off. And by the way, I should say, I like Guillaume very much on a personal level. He's a good guy. And so I'm pretty willing to defend him. It turned out that people were quite cross with Guillaume for insisting on trying to draft this one very narrow plan. And I think we can talk about this quite a lot at length, but not now. But now, I'll just say this. As far as I can see, the goal of professional Magic is to win matches of Magic. And whatever gives you the best chance of winning professional matches of Magic is the only consideration that should be true for you, other than the well-being of others, sure, at any given moment. Draft is not about some Corinthian idea of being a good drafter, or of being the best drafter, or the best prepared drafter, or the most versatile drafter, or the most creative drafter. No, the goal at a Pro Tour is to be the 3-0 drafter. Now, a lot of people were sort of backhanded complimenting Guillaume. They were saying, he doesn't need to do that merfolk thing. He has the opportunity to go in any direction he wants. He's a good player. But Guillaume didn't see it that way. Guillaume saw it as, I'm really good at constructed, and I have a good deck. He was playing the Jeskai approach deck. He liked it. And he went, I need to have one really good merfolk deck and one pretty okay merfolk deck. And that will get me a 2-1 and a 3-0. And if I can do that at 5-1, I then need to go 7-3, maybe. And that could be enough for the top 8. He's not interested in becoming draft master. He's interested in surviving the limited rounds to get to a point where he can then go, thank you very much, I'm in the top 8, I have the chance to get there. That's what he did. He didn't teach you how to be better at Magic. Indeed, arguably, he taught you how not to be better at Magic, because he was all in on a plan before the first pack was open. He wasn't interested in any of the cards that might have been fantastically powerful in other colours, in other strategies. He went, this is my best chance today to get into the top 8 of a Pro Tour, which was the only goal. I am a great supporter of that kind of clear thinking, though I do not for a moment want to imply that that is the route to better Magic. So we get to round 11. We've got 3 players at 10-1. Just behind them, they've got Pascal Menard at 9-1-1, the one draw being the Pascal's wager matchup from on day 1 on camera. And then there were 11 players at 9-2. And they included Palavita Dama de Rosa, Martin Dang, Seth Manfield, which is kind of the first time we'd paid attention to Seth through the weekend, Owen Turtenwald, no surprise there, and then Bram Snetvangers. Now, Snetvangers, a Hall of Famer who comes to a bunch of PTs, Doesn't usually do particularly well. Sometimes doesn't make day two. When he does, doesn't really trouble the back end of the tournament. It's been a long time since we've seen Bram right in the thick of things, and it was great to see. Bit of a disappointment that he didn't kick on from 9-2, but still a very good outing for Bram, and great to see. So at this point, we'd wrapped up draft, and there were 6 perfect draft records. Owen Turtenwald was one of them. So was Guillaume Matignon. Hooray. Then Elias Watsfeldt of Sweden, former platinum pro, I believe, had 1 year as platinum, certainly gold. Zhil Yao of China, who we'll talk more about in a bit, unfortunately. Brian Holmes, now Hohns rather, Hohns. So we checked this guy out. Who was he? He's only played 1 PT before. That was Pro Tour Hour of Devastation. He went 5-1 in draft there. Came back 6-0. Guy's 11-1 in his first 4 Pro Tour drafts. Great job. Top stuff. And then Mr. 76% didn't let us down. Yuki Matsumoto went 6-0 in draft, which rather ridiculously means his 76% win rate will have gone up. Watch this space. Looking forward to February for him. As far as the teams went, CFB was still in the lead, but now Team Ultimate Guard was starting to come up the field, and Tower Games, with Sam Eilenfeld, as we now knew he was, were right up there in the top 10. Indeed, they were in 3rd place at this point, heading back into Standard. Someone who wasn't in the mix at this point were Team Masashi. They had had a wretched day 1. They were 23rd of 37 teams. And when you think that there are plenty of teams who are literally 6 first times who'd got together and gone, why don't we make a team? Being 23rd was just abysmal. More on that when we get to the team series. So, round 11, we go back into Standard. By the end, of course, as always, we got a top 8, which comprised exactly 12-4. Now, poor old Yan Wing Chun, from 10-0, he ended up at 11-5, and that opened the door for a whole bunch of 12-4s who were very tightly bunched in terms of tiebreaks, because Yams had been brilliant, because he was 10-0, remember. He led the tournament, the last perfect record in the building. It did not work out well for Yan Wing Chun. He finished 11-5, as I say. But looking at the standings overnight from Saturday into Sunday, obviously we knew the top 8, we'll get to that in a minute. I thought it was worth looking at the first timers. So there was a 12-4, that's Sam Eilenfeld, of course. It was 1-11-5, 1-10-5-1, 6-10-6s, a 9-6-1, 8-9-7s, 11-8-8s, and then, so that's 11, 19, 20, 26, 29 first timers had an even or better record. Okay? I wonder how many had a worse than even record. 8 at 7-9, 5 at 6 wins, 4 at 5 wins, 1 with 4 wins. 29 players went 3-5. 13 players had just 1 win, 17 players 2 wins. 3 players had no wins at all. And so that adds up to 8, 13, 17, 18, 38, 48, 47, 57, 64, 70, 70, 80. 29 players had an even or better record. 80 players didn't in their first Pro Tour. I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge, and I'm going to do this at every Pro Tour, and if you think I'm joking, I'm really not, as you'll discover. I'd like to acknowledge at this point someone called Daniel Wong, who I don't know. Daniel Wong came to his first Pro Tour and lost all 3 rounds of draft. And then he lost round 4 and round 5 and round 6. And he kept on playing and he lost round 7, and he kept on playing and he lost round 8. And that was the end of his Pro Tour experience. I just want to take my proverbial hat off to Daniel Wong. And here's why. He does something that I call honouring the chair. And a lot of people, I'm a familiar face in the game, right? I'm someone who, I fulfill 2 functions to new players. First of all, I'm always there. So I'm a known quantity. I'm not a member of Wizards staff. I'm someone they've seen when they're watching Pro Tour coverage. They know I'm approachable. They know I'm a reasonably fine human being, hopefully. So I'm a familiar and a welcoming face. But number two, I'm also not trying to beat them this weekend. I am not any potential opponent to them. So as a result, I end up chatting with a lot of new players at Pro Tours. And, of course, quite a lot of them are nervous. And I always say, you might win this Pro Tour, you might make day 2, you might cash, but the one thing I can say with certainty is that when Scott Larrabee says players' seatings have been posted for the player meeting on day 1, there is exactly one human being on earth who is allowed in that chair, and it's you. Because you, whether that's through a Magic Online PTQ or an RPTQ or going 13-2 at a Grand Prix, whatever it is, that chair belongs to you. And there are tens of thousands of Magic players who would love to be you in that moment, sitting down at whatever draft seat it is, at whatever table with however many famous players or other people just like you in your first time at the PT, who would love your chair, and you're the only one who can have it. Now Daniel at 0-6 could have walked away. At 0-7 he could have walked away. But if he'd done so, there's every chance that his opponent in round 8 wouldn't have had a Daniel Wong to play against. Would have got a bye. That's a miserable feeling. No one wants that. So sometimes it's not about other people being part of your Pro Tour experience. It's about you being part of theirs. So when Daniel Wong decides to sit down and play the last rounds, or whoever is struggling and having a terrible day because it just isn't going right, I have genuine admiration for the people who are willing to take every last chance of glory, of a fun story at the end of a day 1 where the dreams are kind of in tatters. So I will always honour the people who honour the chair. And this time, that was Daniel Wong. Daniel, thanks for being part of the Pro Tour. We hope to see you very soon. On we go. Platinum Pros. We had a 12-4, 6-11-5, 6-10-6s, 6-9-7s, and in the end, 3, 5, 6, only 9 of the 28 didn't have a winning record. The Hall of Famers, there were 4 11-5s. That was Stark, Rietzl, LSV, and William Jensen. Hold that thought. We're going to talk about William Jensen in a minute. And amongst the golds, the big 5 were Sigrist, Pascal Menard, Kentaro Yamamoto, Matt Nass, and Alexander Hayne. We'll talk about all of them when we get to the team series. So, on we go. I want to mention some of the players who did very well who were not part of a team. So at 12-4, Sergio Ferrer Rosalen, or Rothalen, I guess, because he's Spanish. He's also played 2 Pro Tours and finished in the top 16 both times. Fantastic stuff. Then there's Jelko Bodevej of the Netherlands. He went 12-4. Yoshihiko Ikawa, this is a puzzle to me, and I haven't found out the answer to this yet, so sorry, I don't know absolutely everything about the pro scene. I don't know why he's not on a team, because he's really, really, really good. Maybe he's just not available for the whole season, because that is a big deal if that's the case. But he's not on a team, and he went 12-4, a virtual tie for the top 8. And so did Shahar Shenhar. Now, Shahar, the thing with him is he's obviously a 2-time world champion, but Shahar has a lot of other things going on in his life. He pursued, my understanding is he pursued video games, other games, League of Legends type stuff, with the same fervour that he'd had for Magic when he was very good at Magic. And so he had basically done very little testing. He was not interested in being on a team. And he just casually rolls up and goes 12-4, which traditionally, this is the point where you go, that's completely sickening. How could anyone be so talented? I don't see it like that. I just think good on him. Well done. And it was interesting that he said that listening to the Hall of Fame speeches at the dinner on Thursday night ahead of the tournament had really sort of given him the fire again, and that maybe he felt he'd missed out on something at Magic. Well, he certainly missed out on being on a team, but with 12-4, that's a great start to the pro season for him. Next up, Francesco Giorgio of England. Now, he was on the World Magic Cup team in Nice in 2014 that made it to the top 8, and 11-4-1, 11-5, remember, is the mark for being invited back for all the silver pros, or anyone indeed lets you come back at 11-5. So 11-4-1, he's back again, great job. And then amongst the 11-5s, well, Wilson Vampire Hunter got to 11-5. Brian Hones, the 6-0 drafter, got to 11-5. Bart van Etten of the Netherlands. I think he's one of the best players in the Netherlands right now. Now, that bar is not as high as it used to be, and I'm not being unkind, I'm just being truthful. The Netherlands in the mid-2000s had a whole slew of Hall of Famers. Bram Snetvangers, Frank Karsten, Jelger Wiegersma, Camille Cornelissen, for example. Bart van Etten isn't in that class right now, but he is pretty good. And that 11-5 is not a surprise to me. Elias Watsfeld was one of the 6-0 drafters, so 6-0 in draft, 5-5 in constructed. And then also Gary Patrick, who I had to look up. I didn't know anything about him. There's always someone who we just miss out entirely through the coverage. There's only 4 feature matches around, and if you're not right up at the forefront and you're unknown, there's a fair chance that you get missed. Gary Patrick finished 11-5, was in his first PT, and he'd got in by winning a Pro Tour qualifier in Vegas, which, by the way, I just love those PTQs. I think there's something fantastically awesome about you go to a GP, you're hoping to have a fun weekend. You're hoping to do well in the GP. It doesn't work out on Saturday. You open a bad sealed pool. You have a few bad matchups. You lose 3 times. You're gone. You're out the door and you think, okay, what am I going to do on Sunday? And I used to love the Super Sunday series. I thought that was fantastic. But here, now we've got the PTQs on Sunday. And I just think it's wonderful that someone wakes up on Sunday morning after a bad Saturday, basically speaking, because you're almost always in the main event and then you pull out and go into the PTQ on Sunday. And long after the main event itself is finished, someone's already won the Grand Prix, and you're like, and now I qualify, and I win my trip to Albuquerque or to Bilbao or wherever it happens to be. And I love watching the PTQ winners. There's something old-fashioned about it. There's something sweet about it, innocent, just joyful. Those Sunday PTQs are awesome. And Gary Patrick turned that in to an invite to Bilbao because he went 11-5 here, which is a great job. So well done him. All right, so there we go. We've got ourselves to the end of the Swiss. And that means it must be time in our next segment to talk about the top 8. If I was a little bit more organised, it's about this point that you'd get some kind of elevator music in the background to sort of do 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 bum do do do. In fact, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to give you the chance to get your own little audio recording device ready, and then I'm going to record 5 seconds of audio for you. Here we go. In do 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 do. And now what you can do is you can turn that into a loop so that any time I'm clearly telling you what's coming on the show, you can play that in the background. It's like your very, very own recording studio. Am I kind to you or what? So, are you playing that now? Still to come on this episode of Talking Points or Talking Points, we have the story of the top 8, featuring not 1, not 2, not 3, not 4, not 5, not 6, not 7, but all 8 players and all 7 matches. Oh yes. Then, Rich will tell you all about the team series, from number 37 all the way up to 1, in excruciating detail. Oh yes. Then, it'll be time for controversy, or possibly not, because Rich doesn't really do controversy, but he will be talking about disqualifications and cheating. Then, he'll rattle through the top 25 for you. He'll talk about Grand Prix Warsaw. He'll talk about Grand Prix Atlanta. He'll talk about Grand Prix Shanghai. And then there will be a rubbish joke for the ages to wrap up this episode of Talking Points, or Talking Points. Do 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 do. Something like that. Maybe one day I'll actually write the jingle for that. We'll see. So, the top 8. A lot of people have said Wizards got lucky with the top 8. What do they mean by that? Well, they're talking about the decks. So what did we have? Well, we had Pascal Menard with Blue-White Godfarer's Gift. We had Piotr Glogowski with 4-color Energy. We had Christian Hauck with Teamer Energy. We had John Rolfe with Ramonat Red. We had Seth Manfield with Sultai Energy. We had Guillaume Matignon with Jeskai Approach. We had Mike Sigrist with 4-color Energy. And we had Sam Eilenfeld with Mardu Vehicles. In case you haven't added it up right, that's 4 energy decks and 4 not energy decks. 4 and 4. That's like even, sort of. And the truth is, yes, we could easily have had 6 energy decks in the top 8. Not least because Reed Duke, William Jensen, Owen Turtenwald, plenty of really big names. And I made those up, but just as an example, there were plenty of people on 12 and 4 and 11 and 5 who were playing Teamer Energy and Sultai Energy, and mostly 4-color Energy. We could easily have had 6, even 7 in the top 8. So in that sense, yes, Wizards got lucky. People also have said to me afterwards, day 1 wasn't representative. Well, look, here's the thing. We're an entertainment vehicle, right? Not like a Mardu vehicle. We are about bringing you the best the game has to offer, not the average the game has to offer. Indeed, we bring you the best players. We deliberately go out of our way to make sure the best players in the world are on show at our flagship events. That's why Platinum and Gold and Silver exist. It's so that the best players can reliably be brought to the biggest stage, right? So I don't think it should surprise any of you that when it comes to Standard, we are looking for the most interesting decks we can find. Right? That's what we want to explore. We want to say what is out there in Standard, not least because it's possible as the weeks go on that the decks that are not right for this week at the Pro Tour are going to be great next week in Warsaw, Atlanta, Shanghai, and then down the track. So, for example, I'm about to go to Warsaw. I cannot wait to find out, are there mono-black aggro decks? Are there black-red aggro decks? Will people be playing the Shaheen Sarani Grixis control list? If so, who? Are they good at Magic? How will that deck do? I want to see that in the feature match area at Warsaw. I really want to see the mono-white vampires. I also want to see what happens if people start playing Pascal Menard's Godfarer's Gift deck, because that to me is a hand grenade kind of deck. The kind of deck that if I were to play it, it would all go horribly, horribly wrong. And I think that's probably true for a lot of people, but it was a Pro Tour finalist deck. That probably means it's going to get played by quite a lot of people who've never picked it up before until Monday at the earliest of this week. That's what day 1 is about showcasing. It isn't saying that Mono White Vampires is the best deck in the room. It isn't about saying that Ramonat Red and Teamer Energy are out the door. It's about saying, here's what else is around, and it might float your boat. So, were we lucky? Yes, I think so. I think we were. I think, as I say, we could easily have had 6 or even 7 energy lists in the top 8. But not only was it split 4-4, we actually had quite a lot of energy getting kicked out early. Let's go through the top 8. So we opened up in the bottom half of the bracket. We had Christian Hauck with Teamer against John Rolfe with Ramonat Red. Now, Rolfe won by 3-2. I don't think it was particularly scintillating Magic. There was some good stuff. It was pretty long, pretty drawn out. It was decent Magic. I say Rolfe wins 3-2, gets rid of the Teamer list from the top 8. We'll talk more about Hauck when we get Hauck. what am I doing when we get to the team series? John Rolfe, meanwhile, it's very tempting to think of him as the random guy who pieces it all together and has one great weekend. Especially as, coming into this weekend, he'd played 4 PTs and had won 8 matches and lost 17. There was a point, by the way, during his top 8 match when the live totals were 8-17. That kind of thing makes me unreasonably excited. I know, I should get out more. Anyway, Rolfe is not the same John Rolfe who started out his Pro Tour career. He has 2 GP top 8s this year. 1 individual, 1 teams. The team was in Cleveland, I think. But more importantly, here's another big life lesson for being good at Magic. He's living with other Magic players. He's a roommate of Brandon Ayres, who's a Gold Pro, and another Gold Pro whose name I forget off the top of my head right now. But the point is, you can imagine their house on an evening. You've got 3 laptops round a table, 3 drafts on Magic Online going on at once, 2 tournaments here, 1 other player drafting, someone building a deck there. Just, what do you think about this? Have you thought of that in the sideboard of your deck? Why are you building that? Why do you play black-green in draft? I've not seen you draft that before. Why did you do it? Da, da, da. Just surrounding yourself by players of your standard, or ideally even better, is a fantastic way to just improve. And I think John Rolfe's a perfect example of that. It helps to be a smart human being, which he clearly is. It helps to be lucky, which I know he is because he made the top 8 of a Pro Tour, and no one ever got to the top 8 of a Pro Tour without being quite lucky, because there's 400 and some players, 8 of you make it in. There's always some luck involved. But I don't think John Rolfe is a one and done. Whether or not he actually gets to another top 8 is not the point, but I think it very likely that he's going to be a silver, a gold, maybe even a platinum pro over the next couple of years. The direction of travel signs are all there for him. So that's John Rolfe. So he beats Christian Hauck. Got it right this time, Christian, sorry, by 3-2. Same half of the bracket, we had Pascal Menard against the remaining undefeated player from day 1, which was Piotr Glagowski, or, if you're American, Peter Glagowski, which is the very, I might call it the hockey pronunciation, because if you don't know, in North America, they basically Americanize all the Eastern European names and the Swedish names, and they all just get these, they just deliberately, utterly butcher the real pronunciation and just make out that they're all actually American. So Peter Glagowski, or Piotr Glagowski, as we prefer in Europe, land of civilization, which is why Britain's leaving. Oh, look! I did it! I'm going to Brexit on the first show! Yes! Political drama at its finest. I did promise you talking points. So, moving on very swiftly, that was Pascal Menard. He moved on very swiftly, defeated the 4-color energy deck of Piotr Glagowski. But a word about Glagowski, first Polish player in the top 8, in Poland this week. I can't wait to see how they do. There are a lot of good players there. Glagowski, by the way, is going to be back at the World Magic Cup in a couple of weeks' time. And although their team hasn't got better because he's in it, now we're more aware that their team is quite good because he's in it. I think Poland are one of the... I won't say they're certain to become successful soon, but it certainly feels like they're starting to develop a critical mass of players who can play at the highest level. Obviously, it isn't just Glagowski. You've got Gregor Kowalski, who's been a gold pro. I think he's gold again this season right now. So they're the big 2. But there are others who are around, and I expect a very strong home showing in Warsaw this weekend. So Maynard advances to face Rolfe in the semis. In the top half of the bracket, the one I couldn't wait for was the M&M's matchup, Seth Manfield against Guillaume Matignon. But one of the things about constructed Magic, as I'm sure most of you know, is that you don't always get the matchup you want as a spectator, and you certainly don't always get the matchup you want as a player. Matignon felt he was in big, big trouble against Manfield. And that's basically what happened. Matignon did win a game with Jet Sky approach, but Manfield handled him pretty easily. It was 3-1, and I won't quite say never in doubt, but actually in Matignon's mind, it was pretty much never in doubt. So Manfield advanced 3-1, and then that left the last energy deck in the top 8 with already Hauck's gone, Glogowski's gone, Manfield's Sultai energy through, and the 4-colour energy was in the hands of Mike Sigrist. Now, Sigrist had been teased all weekend by us on coverage and his teammates about being the only non-Hall of Famer on Team Channel Fireball. Now, the truth is, for my preview on MagicTheGathering.com, I just didn't know how to describe it, because to me it seemed so completely absurd that you could ever construct a truthful sentence that began, Mike Sigrist was the worst member of a team. You could barely handpick it. And that's basically what they did. Luis Scott Vargas went out and went, I want the best of the best, the best, the best, the best. And the team is nuts. Completely nuts. And so when Brian David Marshall interviewed the team about this, they decided that they didn't like worst. They preferred least accomplished. Well, I quite like words, so this felt like a bit of a gauntlet. So at this point, we started coming up with different ways of describing Mike Sigrist on the team. Ones that popped up were frequent attendee, Mike Sigrist, repeat competitor, Mike Sigrist, and a particularly delightful one that didn't make it as far as the air, which was Northeast PTQ veteran. Luis Scott Vargas has never walked away from skewering anyone in his life. But even he felt that maybe we'd gone a bit far once we reached the Northeast PTQ veteran status. Well, of course, Mike took it all in good part, gave it back in spades, interviewing live on the air about this worst player thing. And, obviously, he's a former player of the year. He's ridiculously good at Magic. And talking to Ben Stark about the team ahead of the event, Ben was saying, it was hard for him to just think about without giggling that he was at best, the third best player on that team. It's just absurd. Words almost fail me, which doesn't happen very often, as I'm sure you know. Now, in that quarterfinal against Sam Eilenfeld, Sigrist made a mistake. He had a long tusk cub. It wasn't summoning sick. He thought it was. He messed up. As usual, lots of people decided to be very cross with him and go, how does someone that good do something that not good? I go home from Pro Tours, and when I'm not coming straight back to an airport like I am now, I tend to watch the coverage back. And I am always struck by how calm and clean everything looks. Obviously, I'm aware of all the stuff that's been going on in my ear and in my monitor, and from all the members of the team who've been rushing around trying to find the interview, or who's going to say what about what deck, and are the graphics ready, and which feature match, if this one finishes, but if they lose, then they're going to come in and do the deck tech, but they won't do the deck tech because they've still got someone in contention for the top 8 and they don't want to talk about their strategy in the mirror, in the deck tech, even though we've agreed not to talk about that. And all of that is happening in the 2 minutes before we go on air. And then we go on air, and it's like, hello everyone, and welcome back to the news desk. I'm Ridge Hagen, and I sound in complete control of everything that's happening here. Ah! So, when you watch it back, it all looks so obvious. And of course, you've got people in your ear like a Marshall Sutcliffe, or a Riley Knight, or a Tim Willoughby, or a Paul Cheon, or a Louis Scott Vargas, or a Simon Gertzen, spelling out for you why somebody is about to win. And often, if you actually watch it back in this way, you understand that you've been sort of led a trail of breadcrumbs along the path towards, well, not the witch's house, but towards knowing who's going to win. So, unlike the players in the game, who may be having their own little narrative in their head, you've been told for 10 minutes that the advantage bar is pointing one way and that someone is really going to struggle to get back into it. And that may not be what the two players are actually feeling. And that's not about knowledge necessarily. That's sometimes about one's own sense of how the day is going, how the match is going, how the matchup should be going, how well you think you're playing, how much you respect your opponent, how much they're in your head. There are all sorts of factors that are well beyond that overhead camera and the narrative of the booth for what's really going on in the game inside the players' heads. So I always think it is very presumptive of people to think that was a terrible mistake, I wouldn't have done it. You can think it's a terrible mistake, that's fine. But if you think you wouldn't have done it, I think a lot of the time that's just not true. You might not make that particular mistake, but there will have been others along the way that are your personal pitfall. Because we all have them. Magic is a game of mistakes. Now, Sigrist, to his eternal credit, round of applause, Mike Sigrist, came out and he knew before he left the table. I mean, he was very upset leaving the table. Posts on social media or on Twitter, the one word, vomit. Fair. Perfectly fair. Less than 5 minutes later, also then posts, Sam played really well, all the best in the top four. That is super classy, super classy. Now, it helps if you're on one of the best teams of all time. It helps if you have a wonderful and supportive wife. It helps if you have two beautiful twin daughters. Those kind of things give you some real perspective on, I didn't see a line of play on a turn of a game. But this is a game of mistakes. And I think as spectators, we like to bay for blood, if you like. We like to say that people are terrible because it's much more interesting to say that someone is terrible than someone made a mistake, because mistakes happen all the time. But it was a catastrophe. What a disaster for Sigrist. He didn't attack with the long tusk cub. So what? Here's what he did. He made the top 8 of the first Pro Tour of the season, his third Pro Tour top 8. He's really good at Magic. He's a former player of the year. He's going to come back. He's still got vastly more chance of making a top 8 than most of us ever have or will. And he made a mistake. But guess what? He's blessed to be able to make that mistake on camera. Not because we can all laugh at him and go, he's terrible at Magic, which he isn't. The reason he gets to make that mistake on camera is that he's so good that there's almost nobody left to be on camera except him. So anytime you're a camera match, I always think, you know what? That's because so many other people down the stretch have gone home, aren't playing anymore. Right? He made his mistake on Sunday. Most other people made their mistakes off camera on Friday and Saturday and were dead and buried. So, all round, a top weekend for Mike Sigrist, top human being, and yeah, he made a mistake. Deal with it. So, on we go. Sam Eilenfeld, meanwhile, of course, advances to the semi-finals, where he's going to face Seth Manfield. Now, in that, this was not a fair match at all, as it turned out, and not an especially good one. And just be honest about that. Obviously, it's my job to tell you that Pro Tours are exciting. I think they always are. It's not my job to tell you that every Pro Tour is one of the most exciting of all time. I don't think this one was. I think it was solid, it was good, Sunday was interesting, quite fun, quite varied. Not one of the top half dozen Pro Tours of all time, I wouldn't say. I don't think you would either. So I'm not going to mess you around with that. Manfield demolished Ihlenfeld 3-0. But I do want to mention this Mardu Vehicles deck, because my favourite website in the entire world is www.isitchristmas.com. If you've never visited, feel free to take a moment. And isitchristmas.com is, I believe, functional is perhaps the best way to describe it. It's a useful tool to let you know whether it is in fact Christmas or not. The clue was in the name, isitchristmas.com. And it appeals to me greatly just to know that in a world of uncertainty, at any time of the year, and I like to do this at least once every July, I can visit isitchristmas.com and get what I regard as reliable, fact-filled evidence for yes or no for whether it's Christmas. Now, in the same way, I imagine that whether it's virtual or not, most players have a shelf in their home of decks, and they've got their one legacy deck. Maybe they've got a Belcher deck and a Miracles deck, and then it gets to Modern, and they've got Infect built, and they've got some other thing. They've got a Jun deck built, and then there's their one standard deck that they currently play. And so they've got half a dozen decks sitting on the shelf. Somewhere on that shelf, there is a Turbo Fog deck. Turbo Fog, for those of you who don't know, is basically a deck that looks to eliminate all creatures for being relevant by simply saying attacking creatures deal no damage. No damage gets dealt this turn. That's like a fog effect. Fog was the original. The turbo bit is because there are ways to draw yourself extra cards, and in history that the way this has actually worked has varied, but fundamentally that's what it's about. You draw some cards, you let them make as many creatures as they like, because whether they attack with 1 or 5 or 25 creatures, your one card just says, this turn, none of this matters. And it's a deck that just looks to sort of play such a completely different game to all the fair decks in any given standard format, usually it's standard, that if you're not prepared for it, you've just got no way to interact. It's a bit like this. We'll play a game together, and we're going to each choose a number from 1 to 10. I'm not going to tell you what the idea of the game is. Have you got your number? Okay, say it aloud after 3. 1, 2, 3. Thursday. Well, it didn't matter what your number was, did it? Maybe you went as high as you could because you thought 10 would be good. Maybe you went as low as you could because you thought maybe he's going to trick me with 1 being the lowest. But I told you the rules and then did something entirely different. That's Turbo Fog. You've got no way to interact with Thursday on a scale of 1 to 10. You're just playing a different game. And every so often, and it's very rare, but every so often, it's time for Turbo Fog. And you pull it off the shelf and you just annihilate everyone because everyone's running around with creatures trying to attack for damage, and no one's playing counter magic, and no one's playing things that stop you getting cards back from the graveyard, and you just do your thing, and your thing is so fundamentally different to everyone else, you just win. So I quite fancy a website called www.isittimeforturbofog.com. Someone go ahead and do it for me. And every so often, you just stick a yes on there, because yes, it turns out there is a time for it. It's probably not right now. Mardu Vehicles feels to me like it's in that kind of place in Standard, because it's like there's a switch somewhere in the metagame that suddenly says, oh, is it time for Heart of Kieran? Is it time for I fancy a quick little bit of Ethersphere Harvester here. Oh, I do believe It's Mardu Vehicles time. It's Mardu Vehicles time. I should probably write that as a little logo for the show as well. So Ihlenfeld turns up with Mardu Vehicles and everyone goes, because that's a surprise. And it turns out, Simon Gertzen explained this, it's partly to do with how many braids you expect to be in the field and how afraid you are of a braid. Don't be afraid of a braid. It turns out that Ihlenfeld was the one who turned up with Heart of Kieran, fundamentally a very good magic card, Ethersphere Harvester, fundamentally a very good magic card, and beat people with it all weekend long. And obviously we had a great benefit that Maria, my co-host at the news desk, knew Sam personally. This was fantastic, because otherwise we just, who was this first time? But we had this in with Maria, and anytime you can do that, it's brilliant. It'll never happen to me, of course, because I'm English. So, English Magic players. We'll talk more about English players in a bit. But he did fantastically. He had this sort of aw shucks aura about him. Like, I came in, I thought I was going to lose all the time. I won a round, then I won another round. It suddenly didn't seem quite so hard. Then I started winning in Constructed. I thought, okay, I'll just play some more Magic. And here's the thing. Look, again, I talk to lots of new players when they come to the PT. It's possible for two very different things to be true. Both of these things are true. One, the Pro Tour is this magical, wondrous land full of all the best players in the history of the game, all of whom want to utterly destroy you, all of whom will play fantastically high level with great versions of great decks, having drafted tons, and they will skewer you and eviscerate you and leave you a sobbing husk on the floor of gameplay. That's true. It's also true that the Pro Tour is two moderately comfortable chairs, one moderately not rickety table, a tablecloth, and 2 life pads. You bring half the cards with you for that game of Standard. They're the same cards that you took to F&M 3 weeks ago and that you'll take to the next GP the following week. The person you sit down against, whether it's a world champion or a Pro Tour champion or a Hall of Famer, they're a Magic player just like you. They might have been playing longer, they might be better, but they're still a Magic player. They still mulligan to 6 and to 5. They still miss their 3rd land drop. They still forget to attack. They still get life counts wrong. They sometimes miss lethal on board. That's also true of the Pro Tour. Most people think it isn't. Most people think that it is just this magical fairyland of awesomeness and the best players in the history of the game. But any given round of Magic is just one game of Magic. And that's what Sam Ihlenfeld found out when he started winning. He went, oh, that was unexpected. It's Magic. Yes, it is. And that's why you can win at your first PT. And Sam Ihlenfeld did a fantastic job before getting properly skewered by Seth Manfield in the semi-finals. On the other side of the bracket, we had Maynard with his blue-white GPG, my name is Prince, and John Rolfe with Ramonat Red. This one went 4 games rather than 3, but was still a pretty comfortable win for Pascal, which was interesting because there was some real disagreement about who should be favoured. Pascal felt that he had a great chance on Sunday. Sometimes you see, like Guillaume Matignon felt he didn't have a lot of chance. When Matt Nass made his top 8 a little while ago, he came in basically grinning from ear to ear going, I don't really know why I'm here because there's almost no earthly way I can win this. He got dispatched 3-0, went away and went, yep, exactly what was meant to happen happened. But there was some discrepancy over who people thought was favoured in this semi-final. But Maynard did actually win pretty handily by 3-1, which set up the Pro Tour final of Pascal Maynard against Seth Manfield. I'm going to roll up my no sleeves now because I understand that there was quite a lot of controversy surrounding Seth Manfield's last turn of the tournament. Indeed, the last turn of the tournament. So here's the thing. Opinion on what happened at the end of the final broadly comes into two camps. Camp number one says, Seth Manfield is a terrible human being. Seth Manfield obviously can count to 6 or some particular number. Seth Manfield knew he had the win in hand for several turns before he actually delivered winning with blossoming defence and attacking and all that stuff. And Seth just slow-rolled the Pro Tour victory, and that's no way to treat a valiant and bearded opponent like Pascal Menard. That's opinion one. Opinion two is, if you look at Seth, you can see that he is essentially imploding mentally at that point. You can see him literally bouncing up and down in his chair. You can see his legs literally pistoning up and down over the last few turns. He is getting more and more agitated. Yes, he can see that the finishing line is in sight. But this is a $50,000 finish line. This is a first in the team series for Genesis finish line. This is a under the spotlight win game 5 against someone who's clearly very good in Pascal Menard finish line. At this point, he can barely remember his own name. So he comes out on social media afterwards and says so. He says, I'm sorry to all the people who think I was slow rolling Pascal. I wasn't. I just really needed to check. Now, it turns out that there's quite a neat dividing line between these two opinions. The people who think that Seth should take all the time he needs to make sure that he really had won the Pro Tour and doesn't throw it away on a stupid mistake are almost certainly on my social media feed are Hall of Famers, Platinum Pros, Gold Pros, Silver Pros, regular SNDs at Pro Tours. The people who think that Seth's an idiot and unkind and ruthless and should be ashamed of himself for slow rolling the Pro Tour win comprise almost no Hall of Famers or Gold Pros or Platinum Pros or Silver Pros or people who regularly attend the Pro Tour. Honestly, if your dream was about to come true, wouldn't you want an extra minute to make sure that 4 + 2 is 6? I would, because honestly, I'm like that at a coverage draft on a Sunday night. I'll sit there and go, right, he's at 9. He has no flyers. I have 3 Power of Fly, that's 3 of the 9. I have a Glorifier of Dusk, that's 4 more if I pay the 2 life. I'm on more than 2 life, he can't burn me out, he's tapped out, and he has no cards. So that's 3 + 4 is 7, he's on 9. 9 - 7 is 2. Now I've got this clunky cannon thing that taps 4 mana, tap 2 damage. Just read it again. Does it actually say or player? Yes, it does. Okay, so that's 7 through the air plus 2. Do I have the 4 mana? Yes, I do. I've got 7 mana. Okay, 3. Make it fly. 4. Just read those creatures again. Yes, there are no flyers there. That's 7. That's the 2. Declare attacks. These 2 before blocks. Make this fly. Damage 7. Tap this. Tap these 4. 2 to you. Game. But see how long that took. And that is literally at 1-0 on a Sunday night coverage draft. $50,000. You could see the way he had the blossom in defence. He was almost at the point where making a decision was beyond him. And Pascal Menard, God bless him, comes around the table, goes, we've had a great time together, we've made some really good magic together, but it is over. You are the Pro Tour champion. Give us a hug. I thought that was wonderful. So I just don't see how you can watch that and not have empathy for the guy who's about to win $50,000. I just don't understand how you can feel that way. And honestly, I would just say, it doesn't have to be $50,000. But you think of something that you think you know, and then think there is a massive, life-changing moment at stake for whether you're right or not, and then tell me you wouldn't want to check. You would want to just blurt the name out or the fact out that you think you know. Come on now. Seth Manfield wins the Pro Tour. Fantastic stuff. Well deserved. Genesis go to the top of the Team Series. And Team Series is what we're going to talk about next, here on Talking Points, or Talking Points.